Welcome back to the episode. Just another friendly reminder to please like, comment, and subscribe. It's greatly appreciated. But yeah, we'll jump right in. Today's June 3rd. I think we're just kind of like on the uh, back end of the Lions doing some mini camp stuff. It's crazy though. I mean, they're really like about a month away from getting training camp and all that going. Before we jumped on here, you and I were just talking about how um, they got the Hall of Fame game this year, so they got, four preseason games instead of three, which might be, much needed, given the news that dropped, I would say not even 48 hours ago, probably more like 36 hours ago, the Ragnow All-Pro center, heartbeat, some would say, one of the heartbeats for the Detroit Lions, decided to hang it up. It wasn't anything that was like shocking necessarily. It's been kind of talked about a little bit here and there. But I do feel like we would have liked it to be happen maybe a year later, given that, what we think we can do this year regarding, going back to Super Bowl or going not going back, going to the Super Bowl potentially and really making some noise and, potentially winning the Super Bowl. So we'll dive in a little bit of that and some of the other topics around mini camp. But yeah, I'll kick it over to you, Ian. Just want to see your thoughts on Ragnow retiring yesterday.
Yeah, no, I think it was from somebody like us who, obviously gets all the information second, third hand. I didn't know any rumblings of that, so I think it was kind of a blow, something that, took a second to process as far as, and I still don't know if we as fans fully know what the full outcome will be, because I think you said it right, the heartbeat of the offensive line in particular. One of those guys, a true warrior, played through all types of injuries from, I think he had like a cracked cracked vertebrae in his neck or throat or something one year.
Yeah.
Cutting a toe out a year or two ago. Just and then those are the injuries we know of. And obviously, offensive line playing right in the heart of that is they're even when they're not injured, they're injured. Something's always hurting on them. So I can only imagine what 9, 10 years of that would do to your body at all pro level. So I think heartbeat is a great way to explain it. We don't know the full outcome of this until we play out the season. I think we have a good young core of offensive linemen that we've had rotate in. We have a couple of anchors still. Anchor being Panay Sewell, best in the biz, one of the best in the biz. And then you have another veteran presence like Decker. Maybe a step slow, maybe a step and a half slower at this point than we would like him to be. I think projecting forward, that might should be, early high possession of need next year, come draft time or a free agent is trying to find a good guy to slide in where Decker is, but definitely a leader at this point, still very solid offensive lineman. He was getting completely bulldozed one of those games last year. I forgot maybe it was versus Commanders, but one of those games it was bad. But
Definitely had, yeah, getting beat up, blown
yeah.
by.
So Glasgow still pretty damn good. He'll move over to center. It's looking like, and I think obviously we know this, but a lot of listeners might as well. But that center position is so pivotal. There are a lot of ones calling out the signals and calls for the offensive line. Kind of the vocal leader of that, picking up blitzes, communicating that, making sure that the rhythm as far as cadence and snap and all that's going smooth. And I think Glasgow stepping into that is we feel good about that. And then we have a couple of higher draft pick rookies. I think we can help slide in, but overall, I don't think we'll know the full outcome of this until the season plays out. Just what you're missing when it comes to crunch time in games, when it comes to picking up blitzes. However, if we do what we're supposed to do, we'll be playing well into January, and I think it might take you all the way up until then to figure out just what you're missing when it comes to a guy like this. But I think you said it right. 1 year later, and I the caveat of or 3 months earlier. I think either way that would have been a better outcome for us as a fan base, as a team. But I
Mhm.
understand, I do respect, like you said, just stepping up, saying, "Hey, I don't have this. You have 3 months to figure this out." Versus, like you said, we're rolling into late August, early September, and then we get that come
Like,
across the table.
I got hurt again. Oh, no, no, I really can't do it. Who knows? He might just want that training camp off, and I respect it. He might just not want to have to, go through the wear and tear of that, and he might want to, really just might just need some time. But I definitely gonna sit here thinking that he might, spin the block, just kind of miss it, whatever. I do feel like just given the injuries you went through, you kind of like rattled off that he's had. Like, you tip the cap to him, you wish him the best. I do like I know there's a little bit of talk like almost like after 2023 of him like, maybe thinking about hanging it up and he was able to do it again and he tore a pectoral muscle, was able to play through that the entire, 2024 season. Guy just a warrior.
Yeah.
We're gonna miss him dearly. But yeah, I think overall, as far as like trying to make up for that, luckily we got, Michigan man, Graham Glasgow played, center and guard, good period of his career. You got somebody that knows the offense. Not going to be able to replace Ragnow by any means, but I think that's just somebody we can kind of fill in there that can kind of keep things rolling to where we're not, having to. Yeah, I mean, ain't gonna be nobody to be able to trade for, in June, to be able to play at a high level that Ragnow did. But it is good to have just some continuity there from that standpoint. You look at the depth chart. We did lose Zeitler, who was a key cog. It came from the Ravens last year. Had him for a season. He ended up leaving, but we saw some good play out of Christian Mahogany. That was like a fifth, sixth round pick that was sick and really was like injured for a good majority of last season. But he came in last year. We had some injury issues and he played really well. Yeah, I mean, we've seen what Georgia's trenches has looked like last 3 to 4 years and finally got us one. Tate Ratledge, I mean, that's somebody that also played center. They already got him slotted in at right guard, right next to Panay. So we're looking at, probably like our anchor and foundation, at least, the right side of the offensive line for the coming years. And yeah, we're gonna have to just kind of see what, Glasgow's made of. Obviously see what Ratledge is made of as well, him being a rookie. Um, and we just hope that, Decker, he is getting a little close to that ledge. We just hope he don't fall fully off the cliff, middle of the season or something like that. He'd also be somebody that has some issues with the injuries and stuff too. So I think that I won't ramble too much longer here, let you jump back in, but I think if anything, this will like really help us lean into what I personally think we need to be doing out the gate anyways, and just run the football. That's the easy way for O-line to gel, is run the rock. I think that, knowing what we're coming up against with not having Ragnow, making a lot of them calls, pass blocking wise, things along those lines. Um, I think if anything, this is going to be more of a reason for us to just lean on the run. Defense going to have to come out firing. They got a lot more continuity on that side of the ball than offensive line does right now. Obviously, what Miss Salim and, Hutch will kind of have to get back up to speed and stuff like that. But guys gonna have to step up. And I think Dan Campbell, I think he's definitely the coach to make sure that does happen as well.
No, I agree with that. Just I think establishing a run when we if you ever watch the show, I think that's a very common threat to this in both college football and NFL. Establishing a run helps everything. And I think particularly with our quarterback, he plays better when he can run off the play action, when things are settled and he knows we can get 5 yards of pop on the ground. And with those young offensive linemen, same deal. It's a hell of a lot simpler to say, we have to move these two guys in front of us, get to the linebackers, because it's the same run play we've been running more or less since we played Pee Wee. So I agree with you on that, and we got some people movers. So you look at the size of Mahogany, he's like 330. You look at Panay Sewell, he's easily pushing 330. I think
Yeah.
he's those are
Listen,
massive guys, physical guys. Ratledge is not a little dude as well. So I think leaning into that is you're 100% right, and we have arguably the best back in the game, top 5 back in the game for sure, in Jahmyr Gibbs. And we have kind of the bell cow guy who, I mean, really we have a 1A and 1A, it's kind of we can pick our poison. I truly think Gibbs should probably get the nod to get a little more carries this year. I haven't, this is kind of a different topic, but I scrolled across his stats the other day. And it's kind of for what it could be worth, a quiet 1,400 rushing yards and 500 receiving. I was like, he had 1,900 all-purpose yards.
like 20
Um,
touchdowns.
yeah, just kind of a little slept on. So I think that and Montgomery with that offensive line, and that plays into what we want to do as far as possession receiver, St. Brown. and big play with JMO. So I think all that's true. It's going to be a big blow. I think the overarching theme, what I'm gonna say is add it to the question mark list. Offense, I believe in them. I know we got a lot of good pieces, but it's hard to replace a guy who's played 5,000 snaps and gave up 6 sacks. That percentage there is through the roof. So a top five center and run block and pass block over the last 3, 4, 5 years. Not easy to replace. But I think sliding Glasgow, like you said, somebody familiar with the offense is one less little hurdle. But in general, some of these young guys are going to have to get up to speed a little quicker than we would have liked. And we just have to kind of play by there or play by ear from there. But
Yeah,
overall, it was a blow, and I think just a kind of another question mark. And with that being said, though, some really good pieces still around. We don't have several question marks. We have uh, on the offensive line. It's not major holes to fill, but we thought we had zero holes to fill before this. So
for sure.
it,
Yeah. Yeah, no, you hit it right on the head there. And I think you know, I expect to see, I don't know, and I think it'll be interesting to kind of see how things, unfold because, I know a lot of teams, they scheming up, in June, thinking that that interior line is going to be a place they can attack, a place that they can really like, get after us in, and and rightfully so. I mean, you got Jared Goff, not the most mobile guy, so there are some holes there, or some opportunity, a weak spot there for us now. So I'd be curious to see how John Moore, the new offensive coordinator, how he schemes that up. And they also are fortunate to go up against, a pretty strong D line as well. You come into like mini camp and go into training camp, McNeil will be out, but we got Reader, Hutch, we got the rookie we drafted, Tyleek. That front seven, I think will, help, really like they say iron sharpen iron. So I think that front seven, they'll do what on defense to do what's necessary to, help some of these younger guys come up to speed. And but I think really what this did for us, and I know I can be a little irrational and biased as far as, how I think we stack up against the NFL, other teams in the NFL, but I think instead of being like a, number one or top two O-line in the league. Now we're probably like 5 to 7. I think we still got, the best tackle in the league, by far. And I think he's gonna, do what's necessary to make and bring those other guys up to speed and make sure everybody is doing what they need to do. We also got, probably the best sixth offensive lineman and skipper. I'd be prepared to see, unbalanced, double tight, just doing whatever is necessary to help that interior O line, hold up when they need to. So interesting challenge. Definitely like you said, rather have it in June than having it in September. If you want to look at it in a positive light, but I'm excited to see how Campbell gets the guys going, how we respond, overall to it.
yeah, no, I think you have a good point with steel sharpening steel. I think it's just a blow, and undetermined
Hmm.
what ripple effects it will have. But
Yeah,
I agree with you. We have the shell and core of a lot of pieces in place. The with the Panay Sewells and the Deckers and people who've been around in Glasgow. They know the name of the game. So I agree with you. Just like you said, it's just unfortunate that it happened, but you got to respect the guy bowing out versus going to giving a half ass all season. Or
sure.
uh, I've also heard if he really is off the books, we'd now have the money to go and damn, I'm blanking on my
Pieces.
Jazarius
Darius,
Smith. Go and pick. You have the money to go and throw at him, or
some other
something like that. There
pieces.
might be another solid old interior lineman out there we can go pick up as well. I think it was 14 million off the books. So there are other things you could do to improve the roster. It's not just a complete void,
For
especially
sure.
this early in the season or preseason or summer. So
Right.
you know, uh, with that being said, though, I think kind of establish that identity and what we're going to look like. And I think, we know what the run game should look like, will look like. That pass game, I think it's kind of a yin and yang. Our pass game is so successful because of the run game. And with that being said, JMO entering a contract year, one of the more exciting players in all of NFL with the ball in his hands. Recap first year, I think he played maybe a handful of games. We kind of got a little bit of glimpse of what he looked like last year out the gate, looking good. This year, just barely eclipsed 1,000 yards last year, but got it done. Heading into this season, contract year, what do you expect from him? Hopefully no suspensions coming up. Hopefully, obviously,
Yeah.
we wish health on every player playing, suiting up. But all that being said, where do you kind of see him? And then before you go, looked it up. They got him at 1,300 projected receiving. Or Vegas has him at 1,300 projected receiving yards, 9 touchdowns. Just to kind of give you a ballpark of what people are thinking.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's probably what he would have had this year if he didn't get suspended 2 games. And like I think he might have missed another game just because of injury. Yeah, I mean, this is where as things start to go on, we Brad Holmes drafted so well that there's gonna be some serious decisions made. I know some of my friends who got into the debate around Laporta or Jamison Williams, and who you'd rather pay. That's gonna have a really big year. I think the biggest thing for him, like you said, is going to be like off the field trouble, as far or just, trying not to get any trouble off the field and just kind of like not have to worry about him in that regard. And because he's gonna come out and ball. I mean, he did last year, absolutely crushed it. Wasn't just a one trick pony either. Has been able to just really affect the game in many different ways. And yeah, I mean, I'd say that 1,300 yards, 9 touchdowns. I think that's right in line. I wouldn't be surprised if he was hovering, right around that and even better. Because I do think, even at the wide receiver position, we've got two 1As. I mean, I think James Williams kind of creeping as he gets more comfortable, creeping up there where Amon-Ra St. Brown, that's kind of like our bell cow on the outside, just Mr. Reliable. But I think I could definitely see him doing doing more and then some, like he did this past season. So I'm looking forward to seeing what that looked like too.
Yeah. No, so it looks like he played 15 games this year. So that's missing 2 games,
Okay.
58 catches, 91 targets, 1,001 yards, 7 touchdowns. So I mean, that's 17 yards a catch. That's phenomenal.
Hmm.
He's also kind of a trick pony with him in motion and the shovel passes and reverses. And
Yeah.
I think, finding a way to keep him involved was one of Ben Johnson's like more favorite things to do. And it'll be interesting to see if we keep the creativity to get him the ball, or do we want him to kind of go be more of a traditional, hey, line up and beat the corner to the spot?
Hmm.
Uh, and I think he's shown every year that he might just be one of those guys that I don't want to call him drop happy, but just tries to move without the ball a little too much. Try to think ahead a step or two before he actually secures the ball. And I think that just might be the type of player he is, just being that fast, so explosive. So I think that's something you're gonna have to learn to live with. But if he's gonna bring down 60, 70 catches, I think what I'm trying to say is his game's only expanding. So I think he'll take a natural
Yeah.
progression. I think 1,300 might be a little steep, considering I think we're gonna be run heavy. So I think Laporta will be in a little more, and just kind of leaning into that run game a little more. So Laporta, if you look at his stats, they completely fell off the radar last year.
Grease.
Um,
Yeah.
and so I think they might, considering we have to get him involved, getting him hovering back to, let's say, a healthy 700-800 yards receiving. I think JMO kind of maybe finished, I'd say slightly under, maybe like 1,150, 1,200 receiving yards. Let's call it 8, 9 touchdowns. I think that's about where I would put him at, and that's very, very respectable. And I think more so than we would obviously want him to go and get 1,300 yards. I think coming out and replicating this again is also, it needs to be proven that he's not a flash in the pan. He's not
Yeah.
just a big play guy. He can go and he'll get the ball over the middle. He'll do the dirty receiver jobs. He'll stay out and block. He'll make
And he
the right
definitely made
in
strides
the air.
too.
Yeah. So
Made some huge strides. Just like, I remember one thing come to mind is that Houston Texans game. I mean, he made some critical catches,
yeah,
getting cleaned up by two, three guys coming in trying to get him down. But there's also sometimes he had like some pretty bad mental errors to where, he wasn't running on the ball, wasn't on the same page with, Jared Goff and, excited to see what, James Williams would do. And yeah, even the Laporta, you know how much we love Laporta. He came in crazy on the scene, his rookie year, and hopefully he can stay, healthy throughout camp and everything to where we do just kind of turn into, I mean, this is what we already are, but just like pick your poison,
Yeah.
really. But like, man,
How
but
do you
we,
want to get beat? Yeah.
yeah, but like how we always talk about as well, though, establishing that run, you want to find a way to help this O line get comfortable, get up to speed, acclimated. Don't want this turning into a, track on grass. Got golf out there just exposed because people not getting open or coverages, like guys just aren't there, whatever that may look like. But I'm definitely excited for, to see where both these guys go because I do kind of feel like, I mean, obviously they're on the same team. They are kind of competing for who's going to get
Yeah.
paid and who might get, you know, traded
Right.
because we can't
No,
afford to pay the other one.
I 100% agree with you on that. And I think it would be, just it's kind of just the nature of where we are. Like you said, we drafted pretty well. A lot of these guys are due big paydays, and we got to kind of prioritize what works best, what doesn't. Do we think, does somebody like Tesla show enough promise that you don't have to pay JMO or you'll take a third for JMO or something? Or
Mm-hmm.
does Tesla or does Laporta make it undeniable? Hey, he's run blocking, he's clearing people. This is the next Gronkowski. This is the next whoever. I think it is. I don't know if both can get paid at the rate they want to. Maybe it's possible, but I don't know if both of them can. Also considering on the other side of the ball, Hutch is going to come through and want a major payday. But Laporta actually had a better season than I remembered. He had
Yeah.
60 catches, 726 yards, 7 touchdowns, but he had 40
Average
less.
is a little higher.
He had 40 less targets than the year before. The year before he had his rookie year, 120 targets. This year, 80. So I think that's kind of interesting. I mean, if anybody who's getting 40 less balls to they're throwing their way over a year is,
That much production still.
yeah. And you're so in general, I wonder how how that'll play out. But I think
It's a good problem to have.
yeah, it is a good problem to have. And then just we just mentioned Hutch. Obviously he's due a payday as well. He's was on pace to be arguably the defense player of the year. I think if he would have stayed even 70% of that pace he was at, he would have finished with 18, 19 sacks, um, handful of interceptions. Lord knows how many tackles for losses. So, we all seen the catastrophic injury. We've all seen the rehab from him sitting up in the booth watching people play, with his leg up in the cast to a little bit of running, sprinting, cone drills to, seem to be full fledged now. So, our man Hutch, who we watched come in from a high school player, sit on the Heisman stage at Michigan, kind of come in,
You,
I think all that said, we obviously wish the best for him, but realistically, what are your expectations for him this year? What do you think? I guess a two-part question. What are your expectations for him this year? And would you pay him regardless if he doesn't necessarily have the most stellar year or not?
I think I don't know. I think he first of all, I feel like he like Wolverine for real. This dude got two metal rods, like one in each leg now. He broke his other leg. Michigan broke the other one last year, so he like bionic man at this point. But I don't know. I think just where he's at as far as being cleared, April, May, having all the summer, training camp and everything, having it all under his belt. I think he's gonna pick up where he left off, really. I don't think it, maybe not as like at like the clip of, breaking the sack record in one game and, being on pace, but I think he can still definitely be in that, 14 to 15 sack range. I think and he's also been more of like a stat sheet stuffer too,
Yeah.
forced fumbles, got himself an interception, a couple interceptions, a couple of seasons ago. And I think yeah, as long as we're able to, manufacture some type of pass rush, we were until guys started getting banged up on the other side. We'll see what Davenport can bring to the table. We got Al Quadin Muhammad that came in on the scene last year. Had about 5.5, 6 sacks in like 10 games. We got to get Cash Doll, do a little more work for us to get Zadarius, get him back on the team. I think as long as he has
Send
no
in the
setbacks,
reinforcements.
yeah, as long as he has no setbacks,
Yeah.
and I think I'm happy that it was no ligament tears, nothing, no setbacks from the recovery standpoint. He's fully cleared and fully ready to go in mid-May, and he's got June, July, and August to get back up to speed. So I think he's gonna do pretty well.
Yeah. I agree with you on that. I know we know his work ethic throughout the years.
Hmm.
We know that, we've seen other pretty big injuries, nothing that looked that bad on camera, but I agree with you. We know he's going to put in the work. He's clearly put the work in. So that's nothing that I have a doubt in. I think I don't want to put too high of expectations on him and say he'll come out necessarily how he was last year, on pace for, I mean, I can't even do the math on this, but
He's gonna catch about 20 something sacks.
yeah, yeah, he played 5 games and had 7.5 sacks. So yeah, I mean he was on pace for a um crazy amount of sacks and just disrupting the game. And so I wonder kind of how his motor can be off out the gate. And let me I'm finishing this real quick. Yeah. Yeah, on pace for like 22 sacks.
Yeah,
Which
I think he
so
comes in at 14, 15 range.
yeah,
Catch up, catch fire, mid late into the season. That's kind of what I feel like he did too the last couple years as well.
yeah, and you said a stat sheet suffer. He obviously has good games, but he also, I think, particularly in let's say the 23 season, he would have two. Then he'd take a 4 game hiatus. He'd have
Hmm.
1.5, then a game hiatus, and he'd have 3 a game.
Yeah,
And I think when he has somebody's number, he really has their number. So I think that'll always come where there's certain games where I don't know if he gets a good night rest or if this guy just can't deal with his technique or whatever it is. But there's games where he is
yeah,
crazy, crazy amount of stats. He'd be like a receiver who had 1,000 yards in a season, but he had 500 in 3 games. It's kind of
yeah,
so it's
yeah.
one of those kind of
That's it.
interesting. Uh,
Yeah. I say and I'll say too, like sacks or sacks. I do remember the Buccaneers game. They was missing like three offensive linemen, and I think like was on like their third tackle. So like I think some of that kind of played a
yeah,
factor as well. He was kind of whooping on, I mean, call what it is, whooping on the practice squad guy. But like I said,
you
sacks
got to
and
eat.
sacks.
You got to eat when you eat. Yeah, no, it's cool.
Right, no, for sure. So I think you're right. He does get them off in bunches. It did kind of seem
So
like two, depending on how
yeah,
teams
so
block them.
I think I would like to see, let's say, minimum the replica of the 23 season. So that'd be 12 sacks, couple forced fumbles, an interception. Um, let me see. They don't have, yeah, they don't have pressures on here, but being the top 5 of pressures again in the NFL, bring down 12 sacks, couple of handful of tackles of loss, and he got sticky hands. He always finds a way to get his hand on the ball. So I think those type of stats. I think you would have to pay him the money. Now I have this pull it up here. Top of the list, Myles Garrett, you're getting 40 million a year. Max Crosby, 35. Bosa, 34. Chris Jones, 31. I think he's going to demand somewhere in that ballpark. And I think just to help his case, you probably need that